Yeah, so welcome everybody, and I would like you all to meet one of the very great gurus on leadership and motivation and gratitude, my good friend Chester Elton. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invitation, Michael.
Oh, excellent. And I reckon you're not in your office. Where are you right now?
Yes, I'm in upstate New York. It's a beautiful little cabin that we have in the woods
Yeah.
by a little place, Old Forge, New York. And this is my happy place.
Oh, yeah, excellent. Great. So the reason I wanted to touch upon you in this episode of Niche in a Nutshell with the topic being gratitude is because you stand out, not only to me, but to a lot of people for one of the most passionate people about the topic of gratitude and leadership and motivation. So can you, besides, with your co-author, Adrian Gostick, you have written books such as All In, The Best Team Wins, The Carrot Principle. And now this year you're out with the book Leading with Gratitude. So before we dig into that book, can you tell us, yeah, excellent. Can you start by saying what made you spend 20 years within the whole leadership and gratitude and appreciation area?
Great question, Michael. I've always been very passionate about competition. I grew up with four older brothers, so we were always competing. And getting that recognition for a job well done or an accomplishment was kind of part of our family's DNA. Well, as I went through school and university and went into the workplace, it was very obvious to me that when you worked hard, if your boss simply said thank you, what a difference it made. And so Adrian and I started to write about, the power of, or we call it the power of the carrot, right? You get more work with carrots than sticks. And,
Yeah, yeah.
and as we started to work with that, we realized that it wasn't just the recognition that was key, it was also culture.
Mm.
If you didn't get the culture right, the recognition didn't matter. And so our work became more and more progressive around not just gratitude and recognition, but how leaders use that in a way to create really great cultures where people wanted to come to work every day and do their best and be innovative and felt safe and felt valued. That led us to, write books on culture like All In. Well, our latest book on gratitude, Leading with Gratitude, really a culmination of a lot of that work. Because as we studied cultures and teams and leaders, there was this constant thread that the best teams, the best cultures, the best leaders really cared about their people. And the way they expressed that care and concern and value was through simple acts of gratitude. So it's been a wonderful 20-year journey, and I don't think we're anywhere near the end yet.
No, excellent. And you have also been dubbed, and you, Adrian, as well, as the apostles of appreciation. Now you're turning it into gratitude. So are you aiming for being the gods of gratitude?
Well, we prefer gurus of gratitude,
Gurus of
actually.
gratitude. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So, see, I have spent almost 1.5 decades on exploring and working with negotiation and dispute resolution and all of the behavioral characteristics of people within that area. And you have spent 2 decades on the whole appreciation and leadership thing. So when you wrote this book with Adrian called Leading with Gratitude, what were your main findings that you felt was so important to share?
Another excellent question. We have a database now of over 1 million engagement surveys.
Yeah.
We also have a proprietary database. We crafted a online motivators assessment, so to identify what are people's key motivators in the workplace.
Yeah.
We found that if you understood what really motivated people, you could create better cultures and so on. Well, that discovery led us to a fact that we've known for a while, but is becoming more prevalent, that there was a gratitude gap. What I mean by that is that leaders, if you ask them, hey, are you above average in giving appreciation and recognition? 70% said yes, 7 out of 10. Only 23% of the people that reported to them agreed, right? So there was this gap between how brilliant a leader I thought I was, and the reality. So
Yeah.
as we took a deeper dive into that, we said, well, why don't leaders lead with gratitude? And it led us to dispel these myths.
Mm.
And some of them you'll recognize right away. I don't have time.
Yeah.
People need too much gratitude, right? They need to be coddled too much.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is it's all about compensation. If you
Yeah.
just get the compensation right.
All about the
And,
money,
and
right?
exactly, as we say in the States, it's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah.
So we dispelled those one by one, that obviously good leaders do it sometimes, great leaders do it all the time. They find the time, right? They make sure that the compensation is good. We all know that you need more than a paycheck to really be engaged, that above and beyond.
Yeah.
Why do we do it? So then we took a deep dive into the 8 best practices, and we divided those up into 2 groups: seeing what is going on, and then knowing how to, after you see what's going on, how to recognize and show gratitude in a way that's meaningful to your people. And then lastly, we never met a great leader that didn't take it home. In other words, they didn't leave their best selves at work. The principles that they practiced in the workplace to lead with gratitude, they practiced in their personal lives. And that was very gratifying for us. And so we wrap up the book with the baker's dozen. How did these great leaders take it home? And it was a wonderful journey writing the book.
And just to kick this niche in a nutshell off, can you say that just the definition of gratitude? How would you define gratitude as a term in order to see the broad scope of it?
I think gratitude is one of those words that's emotionally charged.
Yeah.
And so everyone has their own definition.
Yeah.
For me, it's when you get outside yourself and you realize all the goodness that's in your life, regardless of everything else that's going on, that inner core in you that makes you grateful for people, nature, the goodness in your life, which is the opposite of what we get caught up in so often, which is, I worry about what I don't have, right? Yeah, it's interesting that we never put this in the book. We asked the leaders that we interviewed, what is the opposite of gratitude for you? I mean, the simple definition is I'm grateful for things in my life, right?
Yeah.
The opposite of gratitude, we sometimes, people would say, well, people that are selfish, self-centered, indifferent. The one that I really liked was when people said entitlement.
Yeah.
And I thought, isn't that an interesting juxtaposition? Because if I feel entitled to what I get, why would I be grateful?
Oh yeah.
So gratitude to me is that emotional connection to the people in your life, to the work in your life, to your coworkers. And that's why we love the carrot principle. That's our seminal book, our foundational book. We really feel like leading with gratitude took it one step further, kind of carrots 2.0, if you will, to get to that human to human connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure it does. You mentioned these 4 myths that you found when you did the whole survey and going into the analysis, and I believe one of them was the whole that fear is the best motivator, that people want too much praise, not enough time, and it's all about money, right? And I think the whole not enough time, I think time is of course an absolute size, an hour is an hour, but it's what you do with that hour. You see people going to the gym for 1 hour and you see another person going to the gym for 1 hour, but the output that is very different, right? And I think it's the same about being a leader and saying I don't have enough time to give gratitude. Well, it's not about time, it's about how you use the time, right?
Well, that's a really insightful on your part, Michael, because when we looked at these really good leaders, and we were interviewed, Hubert Joly, who took this giant retail chain in the United States called Best Buy from a $1 billion deficit to a $1 billion surplus. Alan Mulally, who saved the Ford Motor Company. And one of my favorites, Gary Ridge, the CEO of WD-40. I know you have a can, right? And they created these incredible cultures and remarkable results. They spend about an hour a week.
Yeah.
I mean, because they to your point, they utilize their time. People say, I don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to text somebody. You don't have time to pick up the phone. I mean, this is not measured in hours. It's measured in minutes, sometimes in moments that you interact with people that they will remember, sometimes for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's hard for me to believe that if you are an executive, and a good one, that you can't figure out a way to carve out 20 minutes a day in a 5-day work week, which is an hour, to engage and value your people. So you're exactly right on that.
So you also, in the book, you talk about this gratitude gap, which also is about, as I understand it, that a lot of employees, they feel underappreciated and they even feel under attack. And very often the leader is not even aware of the fact that they are underappreciating or maybe even attacking or creating fear. So how can you explain this gratitude gap as something we need to fix?
Well, you know, education, right? I always say, look, buy the book, believe the research, you know, it's the roadmap to get there. Coaching is a big part of leadership today. You know, it's taken a 180-degree turn. It used to be, I remember when I was young in business, if you got an executive coach, it meant you were this close to out the door. This was your last gasp, you know, for your career. Now it's very much developmental. And I think, you know, executive coaches play a really important role in holding up the mirror to people and say, you know, you don't think you're leading by fear.
No.
And yet, when you say, you know, I'm just being tough, I'm just getting things done. So when I say things like, you know, if we don't hit this quota, I don't know if I can guarantee your jobs. I'm just being transparent and open. Isn't that what you want me to be? And I go, yes, you are being transparent and open, and you're also terrifying your people.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people react really well to that. We know that fear is a great short-term motivator, right?
Yeah.
The house is on fire, run. Right?
Sure.
That's a great long-term though.
Yeah.
You exhaust people. You know, it's not a long-term strategy. And so I think that, you know, education, holding up the mirror and figuring that out, because it was shocking to us that what seemed so obvious to their direct reports and to us was completely lost on the leader. They misinterpreted, you know, being tough with, you know, creating a great culture.
Well, I also think it goes down to understanding the brain, right? That we have this basic emotions that goes even back to Charles Darwin when he researched in which emotions man and animals have in common. And one of them is fear. And the good thing about fear is that it can kickstart, you know, a range of energy that can explode and make us get out of the fearful situation, right? But the problem is, if you are afraid for a long period of time, you'll gas out. You know, and your employees, if you lead them by fear, you might see short-term results, but they will end up even having a depression or stress, or they will leave the company and you will have to onboard new victims all the time, right?
Sure. And you know, there's this terrible stigma that's attached that when you're under a lot of stress, you know, you can say, look, I've got a bit of a cold, I'm not coming in today, or I've sprained my ankle, I'm going to work from home, you know. That's fine. You tell people, look, I'm really stressed out, I need a mental health day. People go, oh, can't take the pressure. You know, there's that stigma. So it really is interesting as we go through. I think COVID has really shone a light on what do we really need to be productive? What do we really need to continue to push through hard times? And I will tell you that a really healthy culture is one where I'm not afraid to make mistakes. Right? In the 8 best practices, one of them in seeing is one of my favorites. It's assume positive intent. So often as leaders, we assume negative intent. Well, I think Hubert Joly said it best when he said, look, I may be naive. I just believe that people come to work wanting to do a good job. And in trying to do a good job, they're going to make mistakes. And you know what? That's okay. We can fix the mistakes and move on, as opposed to, I can't believe you did that, Michael. You're making my day miserable. You idiot. You see what I'm saying? So next time I make a mistake, I'm not going to tell anybody.
No.
Right? And it's eventually going to come out, right?
Yeah.
And now you've got a culture of distrust, of fear, and that is not a growth mindset. That's not an innovative mindset. So again, this idea of gratitude. Hey, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. How can we fix this? We have a problem that needs to be fixed. You are not the problem.
Yeah.
That's a culture of gratitude. And it makes sense, doesn't it?
It does very much. And when I have taught leaders and CEOs in terms of negotiation, but also in terms of actually empowering their employees in becoming better negotiators, one of the things I've talked about is how you give them a mandate, a trusting mandate, that you trust your employees. And I talk about giving them a flexible and secure and exciting mandate. And the secure part is all about the employee knowing that you will stand by them regardless of they succeed with the task or if they don't succeed. Because if they are afraid of failing, they will fail beforehand. If you understand what I'm saying, right? Because they are afraid of failing, so they almost start to be so fearful before entering the negotiation or the task that they start out by being less optimal than they could have been.
And you touch on a really interesting data point that we discovered when we wrote the carrot principle.
Yeah.
We took a look at a massive database. It was 300,000 people at the time, international in scope, where there were certain things that accelerated when you had a leader that was perceived as a leader that expressed appreciation or gratitude. The number one accelerator was trust.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
When I feel safe and I feel valued, we have more of a trusted relationship.
Yeah. And I also think in the new book, Leading with Gratitude, you talk about was it a survey or an analysis that showed that the number one driver in engagement was gratitude?
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That it wasn't money, it wasn't promotions. It was, I feel valued in my work. My leader expressed gratitude or praise or recognition at least once every 7 days. Think about that. That was the Gallup work. Once every 7 days. That is not a lot.
No.
And what it tells you is how powerful that moment is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, think about employees that get it more than once a week, where it becomes a part of your culture. We've got a real-time example of Texas Roadhouse restaurants here in the States. 600 restaurants, 70,000 employees. COVID hits, they've got to close all the restaurants and go to takeaway.
Yeah.
Well, within 4 weeks, by the way, their takeout business was about 7% of their revenue. And now it had to be 100% of their revenue. They didn't lay off one employee. In 4 weeks, they were profitable. And they figured it out because their employees every day feel valued at Texas Roadhouse. They have team meetings. They build each other up. They share best practices. They've got each other's backs. And because they had this incredible culture of caring, employee first, customer second, community third. Because if you don't get the employee part right, the customer, it's not going to ripple, right? So it was fascinating to me that this amazing culture, when faced with a crisis, pushed through faster, better, and better financial results than any other restaurant in the United States. Any other restaurant. 5 million people in the restaurant business lost their jobs in 3 weeks when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Not one of them worked for Texas Roadhouse. That's the power of building a great culture and the power of gratitude on a regular basis. It was fascinating to watch.
It's very inspiring to hear. And one of the things I also think is important to touch upon when you talk about the whole gratitude thing from your and Adrian's book is that, of course, it also needs to be sincere, because I think a lot of leaders, when they hear the idea of appreciation or gratitude, I even heard about a Danish CEO from a soccer league team who said that, well, my appreciation comes on a monthly basis on your account. You know that? Yeah, you know that's not special for him. That I think some misguided leaders or CEOs, they have this thing that if you get your salary, you're being appreciated.
Oh yeah, you get a little recognition every month in your paycheck. I'm paying you, and
Yeah.
that's all I need to do. You're a professional. Make it happen. Who
Yeah.
wants to work for that guy? Not
I
me.
agree. I agree. But it's just also a thing that's out there, among some CEOs that it's a tough business, and you need to have this sort of attitude that if you need to be appreciated, it's because you're weak. Instead of understanding just simple things like the Maslow pyramid of needs, that we all need a certain level of love and belonging in order to get to the next level where we feel respected. And those two levels work together, right? And the moment we stop recognizing that very basic human need, why would you call
Yes.
yourself a leader?
Yeah. And see, you've touched on something really important. If I give a lot of praise and recognition, I will be perceived as weak.
Mm.
It's absolutely the opposite. Alan Mulally was the guy that saved the Ford Motor Company during the last recession.
Mm.
There is no one tougher on his people than Alan Mulally. There is no one that holds people accountable more than Alan Mulally. And yet there is no one that was more beloved at the Ford Motor Company. Because he demanded so much, he made sure that every little win along the way was celebrated. I'll give you an example. He brought back the Taurus car at Ford. It was part of their magnificent turnaround. There he was, the new CEO of Ford, the big auto show in Detroit, spotlights everywhere, hundreds of dealers, thousands of consumers. He's on the stage and he's showing off this beautiful new Taurus car. You know what he did? He said, look at this car. Isn't it beautiful? Look at the way it shines. Who did that? Well, 3 maintenance guys. The guys that shined the car, he put them in the front row. And he said, you know what? Come on up on the stage. He brought the 3 guys that cleaned the car onto the stage to receive that adoration. He could have hogged it all for himself. He didn't.
Yeah.
And what was the message? Everybody on the team matters.
Yeah.
Do you think those 3 guys ever forgot that moment?
No.
Do you think that they would ever leave a car that wasn't absolutely shining and spotless? So Mulally says, you withhold gratitude in times of crisis, you are shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah. That's when you need it more than ever. Yeah. People need to feel valued. They need to know that what they did mattered, right? And you need to appreciate that. Because see, in times of crisis, Michael, 2 things need to accelerate. Communication. You can never over communicate in a crisis. And 2 is gratitude. When those 2 accelerate, you've got a shot. When those 2 diminish, 2 things happen. Lack of communication gets filled with fear, rumor, and innuendo. None of those are good. Gratitude goes down. I feel emotionally disconnected from the work. I feel like I've been forgotten and that I don't matter. Mm. So you can see how communication and gratitude, and by the way, I don't think there's any better way to communicate than expressions of gratitude. They go hand in hand.
Well, I think, it's just a vital skill. Even when I do negotiations or coaching on negotiation, I say, well, how about giving something to the other party before you get what you want? How about giving just a little bit? How about starting the conversation by appreciating them meeting with you? Just not in a submissive way, but just saying, I appreciate that the 2 of us are having this conversation. You're not saying, oh, I appreciate you want to meet me, but just be confident and say, I appreciate that we are sitting here. It sets such a different tone than just starting out by saying, so what do you want?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And see, that's assuming positive intent, right?
Yeah.
You're in a negotiation. Look, I get that you want to get what you need to get. Yep. And you need to appreciate that I need to get what I need to get. And let's find a middle ground. Let's not vilify each other. This is what's happening in the political discourse in so many countries right now. Yeah. I'm always right. I'm never wrong. You're always wrong. You're never right. Yeah. My win is your loss. Instead of, let's create a win-win. Yeah. We can get where we need to go if we'll just assume that we're good people. Yeah. Try different opinions, trying to get good things done. Let's start from that premise. Yeah. And I'll tell you, when you really are grateful that people showed up and that they're willing to talk, that's a small win. You can celebrate that. Exactly. Thank you for coming to the table. I know that's not easy for you.
Yeah.
We've got some hard things we've got to figure out. I know that if we work together and we assume the best about each other,
Yeah.
we can both come out winners.
The funny thing you say about the political landscape, because I did a masterclass on political negotiations some weeks ago, and I dug into some very interesting facts about that. In the political landscape, it's not really appreciated if you change your mind. Some voters would appreciate that you stay consistent even though you're wrong. There's this old story with the John Kerry, who voted for the war against Iraq, and then he withdrew his vote on it, and then he was called flip-flop Kerry, and it became like a trademark, as if it was negative. Where George Bush, he said, well, you might not agree with me, but at least you know what I stand for. So I think the problem within the political system sometimes is that you're not allowed to make mistakes, or at least that is the assumption, that you cannot say, hey, I was wrong. You're afraid that if you say that, you come across as weak.
Yes, and isn't that silly?
Yeah,
because we've all changed our opinions.
Yeah,
we've all changed our opinions. Listen, I have 4 kids. We didn't raise them all the same, right? The first one, we made all the mistakes with her, right? And then we got better you learn, you grow. Of course, you change your mind.
Yeah,
of course you change your mind.
And I think
we change our mind on food. I didn't used to like hamburgers. Now I like hamburgers. I didn't used to like sushi. Now I like sushi. There's nothing wrong with that. As we grow and we learn, we change. We should celebrate that. We shouldn't vilify that.
Right now with the whole COVID situation in Denmark, we also had the National Health Department, and they initially said that, well, they didn't think that the masks would do any difference, and now they think, and he has openly come out. The CEO of the health department said, yes, I agree that 2 months ago I was standing here saying that I was very doubtful about the how much difference it made. Now we have some data suggesting that it works, so now my recommendation is to use it. Just being candid about, I had an opinion. It was not the best opinion. It was my opinion at the time. Now I've grown smarter, instead of just sticking to your original idea, even though you can see that everything is going downhill, right?
Yeah, and let's celebrate that and be grateful for it. It was really interesting in seeing and then expressing. One of the things we found in expressing that great leaders did is they expressed gratitude in a way that was meaningful.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me hear about that.
Some people, we would look at our motivators assessments and we'd say, look, if family is really important to you, I'm going to reward you with time off. Right.
Yeah.
If money is a big motivator for you, I'm going to give you a gift card or a small cash bonus. If recognition is important to you, I'm going to give you the spotlight. Knowing the difference. And when you get it wrong, people appreciate that you're trying. Yeah. I'll give you a quick example. I was living in Detroit at the time, newly married, my beautiful wife, Heidi. And we always wanted to work in New York. So I interviewed for a job within our company in New York, got the job, flew into New York, flew back, said, honey, got the job. We're moving to New York. This is going to be great. Well, Steve Schwartz, my new manager, great guy. We got to be very good friends. To celebrate, 2 days later, this package shows up at our little apartment in Detroit. A beautiful big bottle of champagne. What a great gift, right? Except in our faith, we don't drink alcohol. It'd be like sending a honey-baked ham to a Jewish family, or a bottle of whiskey to a devout Muslim family, right? So while we appreciated the gesture, the people that really celebrated were our next door neighbors. We said, hey, we don't drink. They go, this is really a good bottle of champagne, by the way. So we would know, right? Yeah. So tune into knowing your people. Yeah. And then I know our time is short. I really do want to get to the take it home. Because what we really discovered, Michael, that was really gratifying, and we've just touched on a few things. This really does have the roadmap. If you really want to be an engaged leader with engaged people, gratitude isn't just a great way to lead your teams. We've got all the data to prove that, right? It is. Yeah. See it, express it, understand the gap, dispel the myths. You will attract better people. You will keep those people. You will be more productive. It's statistically, it's a slam dunk.
And how do you do
what we really love?
Yeah.
Yeah, how you do it is here's your manual, right?
Yes.
What we love though is it just wasn't a good way to lead. It was a better way to live.
Yeah.
And so when we talk to leaders about how did you take it home, one of my favorites was Dave Kirpin, good friend of mine in New York City. He's got a marketing company there. He said, when we have dinner with our kids, the conversation was never very engaging. He said, for example, we'd say, so how was school? Fine. What did you learn? Nothing. Right? It's kids, right?
Yeah.
So he'd say, now you have to answer 3 questions. What was the best part of your day? Who are you grateful for that's not at the table? And who are you grateful for who's at the table who has not been thanked yet?
Mm.
And he said, everything changed. Everybody had a moment to brag about their day, talk about somebody that they really had fun with, and to be grateful for someone in the family.
Yeah.
Simple practices like that. Teach your kids to serve. Interesting, Michael, when we talk to these great leaders, they tell us about your career. You know what they always told us about? The bad times, the hard times, when they almost went bankrupt. Why? Because that's where they learned the most. So in COVID, you take your kids and you say, yes, times are hard. What are we learning? What are we learning? Not why did this happen to me? What can we learn? How can we become better? So from dispelling the myths to the 8 best practices to taking it home, I'm telling you, it's just a better way to lead. It's the best way to live.
Very fascinating. And can you do it too much? I think I heard you say one place that there was a number like 13 was sort of the maximum per day. And then you also said that, well, in reality, how many times have you gone home feeling too appreciated, right?
Yeah. So a million engagement surveys, what is almost always near the bottom? I feel appreciated for my work. To your point, nobody goes home and said, I couldn't get anything done today, too much recognition. It never happens.
It's true. And so I will highly recommend that people go look into your book. I think you can get it at Amazon and a lot of places, basically Leading with Gratitude. One final note I would like to end on is, Chester, is, first of all, I appreciate, I'm grateful for you taking the time, but also grateful for you having a passion for what you do. And one of the things that has really stuck with me, that I heard you talked about your dad at one point, and you said that he had a couple of things he told you that you are still carrying with you. One of them is happiness is a choice, and one is that don't take yourself too seriously, right? And the whole
yes,
the choice thing is also about, well, where you focus on in your life, and also gratitude. Choosing to have gratitude is also a choice, right?
It is. And you know what? I want to end with a cute story about my dad. We actually put it in the book. He was such a delightful guy. And people like to be around my dad because he made you feel better about yourself. He didn't talk about himself. He would ask about you. Well, in our church, it's a volunteer church, and so at the time, my brother Byron told me this story. He was working with the youth in our congregation, the young men in particular. And every congregation has, that curmudgeonly, miserable person that wants everybody else to be miserable. We've all known him, right? Yeah. So after church one day, she comes up to my dad and she says, Brother Elton, you think all the youth in our congregation just love you. Well, I'm here to tell you they don't. And he looked at her with a big smile and he said, well, thank you. And she said, it wasn't a compliment. And he said, too late. So, he said, look, I just assume everything everybody tells me, I just take it as a compliment and I'm not bothered. He also said something that I thought was really impactful. He said, you have to choose to be offended. And I thought that was very powerful. Yeah. Let's choose to not be offended. Let's choose to understand. Let's choose to assume positive intent.
Yeah.
And you know what? Your life is less stressful and people want to be around you. They want to work with you. They want to get things done. That's the power, seriously, of leading with gratitude. Now, I want to offer something fun to your listeners. Leadingwithgratitudebook.com. There's a free resources tab. I sent it to you, just a little while ago. all kinds of fun videos. You can read the foreword, you can read the first chapter. And then of course, we hope you'll buy either the audio book, the digital book, or I'm still a tactile old school. I like to mark it up.
Yeah.
Follow me on LinkedIn and go to chesterelton.com, or we've got a wonderful training company, thecultureworks.com.
Yeah.
So lots of places to go to get a lot of information. We're passionate about what we do. We know it'll make you a better leader.
Excellent, and thank you, Chester. And I will give you one small note to get you on of a good and gratifying day. I had this story from William Ury, who is in one of his books on negotiation, wrote that he heard from a former Japanese baseball player, like the Japanese Babe Ruth or something like that, and he was asked when he retired, when you were standing there waiting to bat, and there was some of the best pitchers in the world trying to throw you the worst and most difficult balls towards you to make you miss and look silly. What ran through your mind when you were standing there against your opponent? And he said, well, basically, I just imagined that he was one of my teammates that was just very terrible at throwing balls, and it was my job. It was my job to help the both of us to make a home run. Because that made me that didn't make me become fearful. That made me step up to help my teammate and me succeed in hitting the ball, right? And yeah, I think it's just a wonderful way of viewing your counterparties and the people you meet, that, well, they have good intent. They may be terrible at delivering, but they are trying at least, right? So I appreciate your time. How can I make you look good? Yeah, and I appreciate your time, Chester, and I will tell people to read not only Leading with Gratitude, but also the other books. They are great. And it was leadingwithgratitude.com, where you can go in and find the
Leading with Gratitude. Yeah, actually, leadingwithgratitudebook.com.
Yeah.
Get all those resources. LinkedIn and thecultureworks.com, all great places to go. We love what we do. You know, I love our conversation. It's still early in the morning here, and you can see the sun is coming up. I'm glowing from our interview.
You are. But thank you very much for taking the time, my friend. And I hope that once the COVID thing is over, that I'll be able to go to the US and maybe even see a New York Jets game with you or something like that. It would be a pleasure. Right?
Yeah, it's baseball, my New York Mets, but always a delight, Michael. I look forward to the day we can be in the same room together. Thank you for the invitation. It's been delightful.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having time. Bye.